Alrighty, everyone, we can get started. My name is Monica from the Adult Literacy X Prize, and this is our 11th installment of Literation Lounge. And Literation Lounge is usually a twice a month speaker series that's supported by our Barbara Bush Foundation Adult Literacy X Prize, and it features experts in EdTech, adult education, adult literacy, and entrepreneurs who are really breaking ground on new ways to solve the world's literacy problem. And so in this series, our system and our current teams, former teams, and general ecosystem who are interested in adult literacy are those who join to learn more about the area of expertise from our speakers. And today, our featured speaker is Marian Fidel McLeod. She is a principal researcher at AIR and director of the Adult Learning Practice Area involved in the field of adult education since 1991. In this role, she's responsible for leading major national and state-based adult education initiatives with a focus on collaboration, professional learning methods. I totally read that wrong, but let me fix it. With a focus on collaborative professional learning methods. She's directed multiple U.S. Department of Education funded projects and currently directs the Preparing Adult ELLs for Rigorous College and Career Readiness Standards Project. She is the project director of the Nevada Adult Education Professional Development Project and senior advisor on the California Department of Education funded Professional Development Project, CalPro. And she has led CalPro Professional Learning Communities initiatives since 2000. And if I can, give you guys a notice to mute your mics, and we will turn it over to Marian to tell us more about educational equity and supporting English language learners. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Monica, and hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure to do today's Literation Lounge, and American Institutes for Research is very happy to partner with X Prize on this effort. We've been involved, American Institutes for Research has made research and technical assistance contributions to the field of adult education for about the last 30 years, so it's an area we're really committed to improving, so we're thrilled to partner with X Prize, and we're thrilled that X Prize has a focus on adult literacy. And we're happy to support in any way we can. So Monica, you gave me a comprehensive introduction. I will say I've been involved in the field of adult education since 1991. I began my career as an English as a foreign language teacher. I think apropos of the current events, it was actually during the first George H.W. Bush administration that I was recruited on to a project called Democracy for Poland, where as a recent college graduate, me and several other recent grads from around the country went to this former Soviet bloc Poland, I think about a week after it formally left the Soviet bloc. And that's how I began my career in love for adult education and adult English language instruction specifically. And right now, I'm the project director that oversaw the development of the English language proficiency standards for adult ed that we're speaking about today. My email will appear at the end of this presentation, and you should feel free to get in touch with me about any matter related to the standards or the work we do at AIR. For good measure, of course, doing anything like this is a big team effort, so I wanted to include our acknowledgments page from the English Language Proficiency Standards publication so that you could see the numerous people who were involved in the development of the standards. And a link to the standards will appear later in this presentation. My focus today is on equity in education through use of standards. There are many elements that go into creating equity in education, for example, distribution of resources. Today, this is two dimensions of equity as defined by Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in a publication they put out in 2008. Those two dimensions are fairness, making sure that one's personal circumstances and background aren't an obstacle to achieving educational potential, and inclusion, ensuring a basic minimum standard of education for all. With the idea being everyone should be able to read, write, and do, for example, do arithmetic, and we have high standards and expectations for all. I'm going to be focusing on that second domain, inclusion, and excellence in equity and educational excellence through use of standards. Standards create, I just have a few background quotes to set the stage for the presentation. This is also from OECD, from a 2012 publication. Standards create an expectation for the quality of education, and it guides educators in their instruction, and this is a key factor in equity. As a matter of policy, standards are good policy. For education policymakers concerned with outcomes, standards are a part of closing achievement gaps and improving outcomes for all students. I'm going to go through these first few slides pretty quickly, and Monica, you're going to monitor the chat, and if there's any questions that come up, please just send them my way as we go. So new technologies make it possible to offer just-in-time and on-demand language learning opportunities, and they create an environment of greater access for English language acquisition, instruction, and learning to occur. Coupled with access should be excellence and rigor. So we have lots of opportunities for more people to have just-in-time learning, and my presentation will be concerned with the quality, effectiveness, and rigor of those learning opportunities. And with that, specifically use of the English language proficiency standards for adult education. And I will say the English language proficiency standards were published in October 2016. American Institutes for Research did this work for U.S. Department of Ed, OCTAE. And these few bullet points speak to the context, the why of standards for adult learners. Because there was a view and data points that support the notion that there is a real inequity of opportunity for adult learners in the United States. Students aren't learning what they need for success in college or for 21st century employment. And as a result, states establish standards for courses and levels. However, there's inconsistency with this approach between states and within states. And so the U.S. Department of Ed, OCTAE, established two projects, one that developed the College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education, which takes on adult basic education, ASE, literacy, and language primarily for native speakers, with a focus on mathematics as well, and the English language proficiency standards for adult ed, which deals specifically with language acquisition. So again, why the ELP standards? The importance of college and career readiness for adults can't be overstated. Students entering the workforce have been discovering they need critical knowledge and skills that are used on a regular basis and which they're not necessarily engaged in through the educational process. So this is I guess the big picture of this is the two standards documents, College and Career Readiness Standards and Adult English Language Proficiency Standards, are geared towards creating a shift in the way education is developed for adult learners in the United States, one that better prepares them for contemporary economic and social needs and the economic and social landscape they have to be successful within. And to create a lever for programs and instructors to provide instruction that really supports them in meeting this. And of course, adult English language learners have a dual challenge as they gain their secondary education in these settings, and that's to both learn college and career readiness level skills and at the same time learn English. So Monica, I'll rely on you for any questions. I'll get right into what the standards are. This is just, there's the link to the publication you'll have for your reference and to have later in this recording. So what do the standards do? The standards highlight and amplify critical language knowledge, critical language and knowledge about language and skills that are integrated into the college and career readiness standards. They underscore the interconnectivity between language and standards-driven academic content. They define what English language English language learners should know and be able to do related to language use, and they support equal access to high quality instruction. So the English Language Proficiency Standards Report is a slender document. I think it's a couple of hundred pages. And I think there's a few features that I want to focus on that may be useful in supporting the development of technology interventions that provide language learning instruction, so that the quality of what's offered is, again, rigorous and adequately prepares learners for the social and economic landscape they have to engage in. So these few features that I'm going to focus on today are the guiding principles of the adult ELP standards, the knowledge and skill defined by the standards themselves, the level descriptors for each standard, and the instructional scaffolds that are needed to create effective instruction for standards-based education. So the guiding principles. The guiding principles of this work were created to develop a foundation understanding of adult English language learners and language acquisition that guided our process in the development of the standards. They describe the assets learners come with and the needs they have, with the idea being that this will help educators develop an overall effective instructional approach and a supportive climate for students. So what are the guiding principles? There are 10 guiding principles, and I'll just do a very quick review. Adult ELLs must be able to successfully engage with a variety of informational texts. Informational texts are nonfiction texts that they would encounter in the workplace, in working with staff at their children's schools, in hospitals. Scaffolding, the second guiding principle, scaffolding is an essential tool to facilitate ELL's acquisition of language and content. So the learning offered has to provide a way to mediate where students are to where they need to arrive, with the idea that they're going from dependence to independence in their ability to execute a language task. ELLs with disabilities have specific instructional needs, and of course it would need to be assessed, the nature of the disability, and they would need to have access to services that allow them to engage successfully in English language acquisition instruction. Multimedia technology aligned with ELP standards for adult ed should be integrated into instruction. Digital literacy is now a foundational literacy skill, and it requires specific attention in any curriculum. Academic language instruction should be incorporated into all content lessons, including mathematics. Oh, you know what? I think my slides are acting funny. Okay, good. Then there are the 10 standards themselves. The first, and again, I don't want to read these off to you. They're present in the book, and I'll speak for a moment while anybody on looks at the slide. The first standards 1 through 7 describe the language necessary for ELLs to engage in content-specific practices associated with academic content. This begins with a focus on extraction of meaning and progresses to engagement in these practices. And then standards 8 through 10 are the micro-linguistic skills and structures that are needed to engage in the first 7 standards. And then there's functional skill required. The 10 standards emphasize 3 main functional language skills: productive language, skills such as producing spoken and written language, interpretive language skills, skills such as making meaning from written or spoken language, and interactive, the collaborative or synthesized use of productive and interpretive skills, so engaging in a discussion, creating an academic project. Then there are the level 1 through 5 descriptors. So the standards themselves describe broadly knowledge and skill any adult ELL would need to be successful, again, in contemporary society and contemporary economy, to support teachers in having high quality instruction that supports learners in moving in both their language acquisition and moving through the expectations of the standards. Each standard includes 5 performance descriptors. The level 5 is the highest level inside of the ELP standards document, and it encompasses the skills learned in the 4 proficiency levels that precede it. They describe a range of student proficiency for each standard in a progression from 1 to 5. They provide a granular description of learner knowledge and skill at each level, again, with the idea being the descriptors are what's really useful for instructors or the development of instructional materials, so that we are attending to language acquisition really in accordance with where students are at and where we want them to go. And they can support greater instructional focus, differentiation, and scaffolding. Next piece, again, I'm going kind of quick, and I think, Monica, I have 3 more minutes of chatting. So if whatever the questions are, I could certainly go back in my slides and speak more to any one of these areas. The final area that I would point you towards in the English language proficiency standards document, that's a feature of the document, is our section on instructional scaffolding. So if we have the standards, we know what we want students to know and be able to do. We have performance level descriptors that describe where students start in relation to that specific knowledge and skill and where we want them to get. How do we get them there? And that's through instructional scaffolding, in part. Scaffolding is the temporary guidance or assistance a teacher provides to a student that enables them to perform a task they wouldn't be able to perform alone. And the goal being that they're moving from dependence to independence. They're eventually able to perform the task independently and not require that instructional scaffold in order to succeed at that language task. This is found in the standards document, I think in Appendix C of the document. We recommend supports and scaffolds and provide them for adult English language learners in accordance with the level. So you'll see in the red bar across the top, and I imagine it's really small font for some of you, English language proficiency levels 1 and 2, so our beginning levels, ELP levels 3 and 4, our intermediate level, and ELP level 5, our advanced level. Some supports and scaffolds, and if you look across, I know we're not going to do it right now, you would see that some scaffolds such as wait time, building background, they'd be appropriate across levels. And this listing was meant to be comprehensive but not exhaustive. So what is scaffolding? The supports, we divide them into 3 categories for purposes of this document, and supporting use of the standards in instruction or development of curricular materials. The 3 categories are teacher language and teacher student exchanges, materials and activities, and student groupings. So teacher language and exchanges, this is the interplay, the collaboration, the synthesis that goes on in the classroom between teacher and students. And you'll see that at our earlier levels, levels 1 through 2, more scaffolds would be needed to assure student success at the early levels. And again, with this idea of we go from having high scaffolding in the beginning to more independence towards the end, there's fewer needed scaffolds at our upper levels. And some of those, like give wait time, so ask a question, wait for a response, an appropriate amount of time for student complex cognitive processes to happen and for language use to occur. Our second category, materials and activities, this speaks to the choice of materials that might be purchased or developed by a program to support learners. The materials and activities might be published materials, they might be authentic materials, and there are, I think, some tried and true things that English language teachers use regularly: total physical response, graphic organizers, vocabulary lists, academic vocabulary lists, etc. And some of these you'll see repeated across all three of the groupings, and some with more being in the ELP level 1 and 2. And finally, student groupings, and you'll see that this is the same couple of ideas. And this category speaks to classroom work, although if on this webinar there's any developers, app developers, language, online learning, course developers, it would be an interesting enterprise to the degree to which built into an online learning environment, these type of effective groupings could be used. So there's peer-to-peer learning, high-level groupings where there's a high level of instructor engagement and opportunity for peer learning with an instructor backing away and letting the learning occur between groups of learners. Let's see, Monica, I am trying to be very mindful of our time, which is short. So we have 8 minutes, and I am happy to answer any questions or to spend more time on any one of the areas I've already covered. Monica, I'm listening intently. I'm not looking at a chat pod. So
No problem. Thank you. And I've given everyone the go ahead. Feel free to start asking your questions in the chat box. Or if you'd like, you can unmute your mic and ask your question directly. But while we do that, I will start. I'll start with a question. I know you talked about shifting the way that adult ed is taught. And could you touch on any strategies that have successfully shifted the way that it's taught so that it's more receivable for the adult learner?
Yeah, the big shifts in instruction that are required of this standards-based education reform effort have to do with use of evidence, academic text, use of evidence, and knowledge building through engagement in complex tasks. So what's demanded by the standards is that we are selecting informational nonfiction texts that learners would likely encounter in a post-secondary education environment, a career technical education program, or the workplace. And we're similar to the Common Core. And we're asking them in the type of activities we engage with, in the learning we provide to them, to engage with that text and seek evidence from text specifically. So that's a big shift. And we're asking them to engage in meaningful, complex tasks that really build a knowledge base for them. And I was an ESL teacher for a long time, and I think it would be really common to, maybe guilty of this myself, you know, what did you think about that? Sort of an opinion-based use of language and use of text. So read something, what do you think? How do you feel? Can you think about a time in your life that would be typical? And here we're moving towards something more academically rigorous, again, with the idea being that it better prepares them for success outside of the classroom and the economy and society that demands more of them.
Hold on, I'm unmuted now. Sorry, guys. You shared a URL for the standards. Is it possible for you to share that URL again for the reference?
Oh, sure. I can, everybody can stand it. I'll scroll backwards. Sorry,
No worries. Presentation in reverse.
So that's, you'll recognize it when you see it, and it would be found on U.S. Department of Ed. Octave has a site called Links, Literacy Information and Communication Systems, and you'll find this and the College and Career Readiness Standards document and many other resources developed under U.S. Department of Ed. Octave initiatives, as well as other high quality resources that have been vetted for inclusion.
Okay, hopefully everyone sees the link and the URL. And if you'd like, I'll make sure that we share this out in the email that I send that will also have this video in it. Maybe we can just do a hyperlink button to go directly to this document.
Sure. Are there any other questions, Monica?
Let's see, I have one more. You mentioned scaffolding. Is there challenges to scaffolding in regards to personnel if teachers aren't able to provide that additional support or anything like that?
Yeah, I think a scaffold is professional learning opportunities for teachers. If we have these shifts that we're expecting of students, it means shifts we're expecting of teachers as well. And I think for anyone involved in the field of adult basic education, you would know that it's a under-resourced field, and those professional learning opportunities aren't as frequent or as focused often as they could be in order to support this. So I would say to do this type of standards-based education reform, to implement standards, to develop highly effective lesson plans and curriculum, you really want there to be the availability of high quality professional learning opportunities for teachers as well.
Okay, thank you. So what we'll do is last call on questions. So if anyone has a question or anything that has come to mind, feel free to type it in the chat box, or you can unmute your mic and say it aloud. So I'll give you, seconds to figure that out. In the meantime, play the Jeopardy theme song in your head.
Yes, and I wanted to make sure you saw my email. I welcome anyone who's on this call or who may watch this brief webinar later to please get in touch. I'm happy to speak about this work. Anybody involved in the effort is proud of the effort, proud of the work we've done, and wants to share it, and would be happy to help you and your colleagues in increasing the rigor of what's offered to adult ELLs.
Thank you. Alrighty, last call on questions. If not, we will move to wrap up. I'd like to thank Marian again for gracing us with her presence and the great expertise on equity and the need for rigor in curriculum to be able to push adult language learners to higher levels. It's what is the saying? Much is expected of something about being required. Of course, I think about a quote that I can't quote correctly, but it's important to be able to have high standards and expectations of those. And it also helps with empowerment and motivation and self-esteem when it comes to those who are looking to increase those literacy levels, to know that you think very highly of them and think that they're very capable. I think that's a very, very important thing to drive home in expanding access and giving additional opportunities that move over into all places of their lives. And here at X Prize, we are doing our part to be able to do that as well. We've started our communities competition. We are currently in our registration phase. You guys can see this, hopefully you can. But we started registration back in the summer, and our registration deadline is December 21st. In the communities competition, we are challenging the community to help us distribute free winning app to adult learners in their area. It's free to compete, free for learners, and you have an opportunity to win additional funding for your adult education programs wherever you may be. It's all about impact and transforming lives through literacy and helping people really be able to increase their opportunities, read a bedtime story to their children, and just have a better quality of life by just being able to increase their literacy skills via the use of adult literacy apps. And they're free, available on Android, and they can be without internet. So it's learning on the go on their terms. So please visit communities.xprize.org for more information about that competition. And as we get ready to ramp down and conclude our Literation Lounge series, we've been having these twice a month since June. We have one more to go, and our next Literation Lounge is December the 11th at 1 p.m. The topic will be a focus on equity in education, and it'll be presented by Dr. Sharice Moore of the American Institutes for Research. So after this webinar, you will receive an email with a video of today and a registration link for our next Literation Lounge, which is next week. If you have any questions, just feel free to fill those, Marian. And with that, I will wrap up. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And I'll make sure that I share that link from the slide in that email as well, in case you want to go back and reference that directly. So Marian, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the sharing of your expertise. Be awesome, and everyone have a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Monica.